Do the Pittsburgh Steelers coaches have issues with how they're aligning their personnel packages, particularly on defense? That's a question we'll explore here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, here with Mike DeFabo of The Athletic. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things on the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday to Friday episodes as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day because we're your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you get $300 back in bonus bets to use across the app. As I said before, we're joined by the man himself, Mike DeFabo. He's back from The Athletic. We love having Mike on. Mike, one of the big questions that people, I think, have been reasonably asking, because I've dismissed the idea that the Steelers aren't calling different plays. They certainly are. They're calling different looks. They called every coverage known to man on Thursday night. Just didn't work. But if you wanted to point the finger at something that coaches are doing, I think a reasonable thing to point at is how they're using their personnel, when they're using their personnel, and how that's playing to certain matchups. As a journalist who was there to see all of it Thursday night, and you've had time to look back over it, what has been your assessment as far as how that's played a factor into what's been going wrong, especially on defense?
Yeah, I think what you're alluding to is a lot of people would like to see more of Nick Herbig.
Yes.
And let me first start by saying I'm a big fan of Nick Herbig's game. I think that he's going to make a ton of money when he hits the open market at some point. If the Steelers don't sign him, somebody else is going to sign up for him as one of their starting edge rushers. And I think he's been fantastic in one-dimensional pass rush situations and even has more pass rush use than Alex Highsmith. That said, maybe we can get into a little embrace debate here on this show, Chris, and have a little argument, because I kind of understand why the Steelers did what they did against the Bengals. And so they primarily ran their nickel defense, which makes sense to me because you need to match up against the many receiving threats of the Bengals. And then they had trouble stopping the run, so they wanted a little bit of a heavier version of their nickel. So instead of Peyton Wilson, we saw more of Cole Holcomb. And instead of Nick Herbig, we saw more of the edge setting, edge rusher in Alex Highsmith. So I think that the thought process was, we're not stopping the run right now. The way to do so is with some bigger bodies and with those run stuffers, Highsmith and Holcomb. Unfortunately, when those guys don't get the job done along with the collective, then there is room for second guessing and definitely some conversations to be had.
To your point, Mike Tomlin had a similar answer when I asked him this question on Tuesday at his press conference. Here was Mike Tomlin when I was asking about Nick Herbig.
Mike, you guys only used Nick Herbig for about 29 snaps Thursday night. Was that, when you guys reviewed the game, was that deemed as like a personnel deployment like mistake, or was that part of the plan in this game to limit him for some reason?
Certainly our inability to control the run and limiting one-dimensional passing circumstances probably affected his participation some. But again, we got a lot of good players. As I mentioned often, when you guys talk about playing time, just keep watching. We're going to utilize all our good players. Sometimes games unfold, whether it's schematics or matchups or just how things unfold. You guys were asking me about Muth last week. I would imagine you're not going to ask me about Muth this week. And that's just an example of it.
Mike Tomlin got me with you guys asking about Muth. I was like, dang, I'm starting to feel like Stephen A. Smith over here getting questioned about the Steelers' offensive line. But in all seriousness, Mike, I hear him what he's saying there is that, like, there's certain situations that dial up, that you dial things up for, especially in the game plan, that sometimes get away from it. But this is where I guess this is where our back and forth can happen here is I sometimes think that there needs to be a cutting out of the middleman, if you will, or a sort of like, hey, let's get past the red tape. I know we wanted to do these things, but we got to get that guy on the field, especially when it's late in the game and you know they're throwing the ball and it's time to gear up and say, Nick Herbig, wind him up and send him after Joe Flacco.
Yeah, I think the trouble in that game is they weren't doing anything well. They didn't cover well. They didn't stop the run. And then they also didn't rush the passer well. So, I mean, I can hear you, Chris, and I understand the point that one of their many issues was they didn't put Joe Flacco under enough pressure and bring enough heat. And if you have a guy like Nick Herbig that is a different type of rusher, and really his speed rush makes sense in terms of getting to a quarterback who wants to get the ball out quickly, I could understand what you're saying there. I guess from their point of view, they just felt like they were having so many problems stopping the run that they wanted to go in that direction. And that's why I think they did it. I'm not saying it's the right move, but I think that's why they did that and why they kept those bigger linebackers in the game.
I can see that. I can understand that. I can empathize with the thought process there. I think that this is what they're going to have to really work on, is trying to get the right packages out there, because it's not just Nick Herbig. There's times, and I talked about this with Nick Farabaugh in yesterday's episode, but there's times where I don't get Chuck Clark being the deep safety in certain situations. Why isn't that just consistently Juan Thornhill? And I know you want to. I think the Steelers have done some really good things with how they've put certain guys in certain situations that have given them certain matchup victories. But I think there's sometimes that it costs you when Chuck Clark is giving a coverage bust, on a deep ball, or is just caught out of place because that's just not his strength, where that's exactly Juan Thornhill's strength, is to play the deep safety role, keep things boxed up, and, put himself in positions to make plays on the football. And that, to me, if they again, I've been saying, I think Terrell Austin, his schemes and the plays that he's drawing up, that's not as much the issue. But I think it's when and where he's putting guys to make some of these plays. I think that can be a bigger thing that people point to. But I also think that there's sometimes experimentation with it. Like, for example, in this game, they came into this game saying we got Ramsey and Slay and we've kept Porter with the idea that we're going to be able to run man against these guys and take them away. And it failed. They lost. And so they went to several other plans and they kept not finding those answers. And so sometimes a season of coaching is making those adjustments and saying, hey, did we win here? Did we lose here? Why did we win here? Why did we lose here? And to me, the better part of what actual good coaches do is when they see those notes early on, they make adjustments to them. And they say, we gotta make sure that next time we see something like this, including if there's a rematch like there will be between the Steelers and the Bengals, that we do not get beat like this again.
Yeah, and I wonder maybe the next time around, if they happen to see Joe Flacco, if they'll bring more different kinds of pressures as well. Because I think that, like Flacco showed, if he has time, Jamar Chase is such a great receiver. And he is a great receiver. I mean, he won the Triple Crown last year for a reason. I think he is the star of the game in a wide receiver in a passing league. It just wasn't working. I think that maybe next time around, if I were doing things, I think you got to just get to Joe Flacco, hit him, hurry him, make him miserable. He's 40 years old himself. He's not going to want to get hit. He's not going to want to stand in there and to absorb those blows to make the throws. So I think that would be my approach. If you can't man them up and zones aren't working and your pass rush isn't getting home with 4, I think that's the approach I would take.
I think that's got to be part of it. And you know what? It might be a matter of saying, hey, we're gonna play tight man coverage early on, and we may lose this route in about 4 seconds. But we are trusting that if we bump and run with these guys up front, and we make it so that Joe Flacco can't get the ball out within 2 to 3 seconds to a cleanly open wide receiver, that's going to be what our pass rush needs to get home. Because as we pointed out, when you go back and you watch the tape on this game, Cam Hayward had 6 pressures in this game. He was getting through. And if there's about 2 or 3 plays where if he just has half a second longer, he hits home on Joe Flacco. On the deep ball to Ioshavas, where he cooked Darius Slay on the first step of the route. If Slay just contains that for 2 seconds, TJ Watt has a sack, maybe sack fumble, and that changes the game entirely. And those are the little things that sometimes can make the biggest differences. And I hear your point about that. And I think it could be a matter of how they're using their guys to win those situations.
Yeah, I mean, it was disappointing to me because even though it's difficult to create pressure with a 4-man pass rush, that's also why you're paying Cam Hayward and TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith so much money. That's why you drafted Derek Harmon in the first round, is because ideally they want to be able to get pressure with just 4. But when you see that it's not working, that's where I think you can dial up some different things. And that includes using Ramsey in a variety of ways. I think that bringing him on more nickel pressures would be another way to get to Joe Flacco. We saw how it worked with Dylan Gabriel on what was it, the second series against the Browns, where he came on that nickel blitz and Gabriel had no idea he was coming. And I think just adding that and even creating the cat and mouse game of Ramsey showing pressure and then maybe not coming. And then also that can also help you within some of your run defense. When you've got that guy, he might be able to make a tackle in the backfield if he's coming on a pressure, or he's going to change the numbers or how they're going to block things up front when they've got maybe another guy or they think another guy is going to be coming into the box. So, all these things I think are tools that they can use going forward. I think that, again, just bringing more pressure, I think, will probably be part of the solution next time they play Joe Flacco and the Bengals.
I agree. That's got to be a big part of it. And it's why Mike Tomlin's saying, hey, stuff the run so you can get to that point as well when talking about it. But I also want to talk about another key part of this defense, and that's what's happening on third down and why that's going to be so important against this Packers team that's been really good on third downs. We'll talk about that next year on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, Mike DeFabo, stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, I want to remind you this show is brought to you by Game Time. The NFL season is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle between queues, login screens, prices jumping at checkout. It's frustrating. That's why I use Game Time. It's the app that gives you the advantage back to the fans. Game Time is fast, easy, and backed by the Game Time guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the prices you see is the price that you pay. I pull up Game Time, and just a couple taps, I see amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite NFL games as low as $100. I love zone deals too. Pick the section, Game Time picks the seats, and you save big. Honestly, it's faster, cheaper, and less stressful than any other way I've ever bought tickets. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL, and you'll get $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm Chris Carter. He's Mike DeFabo of The Athletic. Mike, the Steelers' third down defense has not been good this year. In particular, right now, when you look at it on third down percentage, they're allowing teams to convert 41.9% of third down attempts. That is 25th in the NFL. They are, and especially it gets even worse when you get to third and long. I guess it's not worse, but it's still bad. They give up 24.5% of third and 7 or longer. That ranks 18th. And that's a really big problem this week, Mike, because they're going up against a Packers team that currently ranks number 1 in total third down percentage at 49.3% and number 1 in third and long percentage at 43.8%. What do you see going wrong in the Steelers' half when it comes to this third down defense?
Well, I think one of the biggest problems is right now they're giving up explosive plays, period. And so it's happening on the ground, it's happening through the air, and it's happening on third down. And so typically third and long is a tough situation for an opponent, but when you're facing a Steelers team that's struggling in that area, it's not as daunting. And so, Chris, since we are big numbers guys, we do our homework on this podcast.
Yes, we do.
So we use a site at The Athletic called True Media, and they define an explosive play as a rush of 12-plus yards and a pass of 16-plus yards. And I know there's different criteria, different ways to measure it. According to that criteria, the Steelers have allowed an explosive play on 12.5% of opposing snaps. Only the Bills and the Dolphins are worse in that area. And so, I can think anecdotally about this happening in a variety of ways. Against the Bengals, it was quick slants. It was getting the ball to Jamar Chase on crossing routes. Mm-hmm. Against the Seattle Seahawks, I felt like they gashed the Steelers over the middle, where those defensive backs had outside leverage, and Cooper Kupp and Jackson Smith and Jigba were winning on slants over the middle repeatedly. I can think back to the Patriots game where they were just churning out like 4 yards, 4 yards, 4 yards, getting themselves in third and manageable situations, mm-hmm. and able to convert those third and shorts, eat up time of possession. So I think limiting explosive plays is a big thing. Then the other part of this is it was great when the Steelers defense forced 5 turnovers against the Patriots and won that game. But when they weren't able to get the turnover, getting off the field in a traditional way was a problem. And that was one of my concerns within that game was like, on one hand, you could look at it and say, wow, this Steelers defense is incredible. They forced 5 turnovers. No team's going to win a game when they turn the ball over 5 times. The Steelers defense is in a great spot. But if you look like play to play, if you're a defense and you can't get off the field on third down, you're going to have a problem. And I think that side of things is more an accurate reflection of the problems that they're going through more recently, especially over the last 2 games when they failed to force a turnover.
Here was Mike Tomlin when I asked him about the third down defense and what they need to do to be better.
Mike, you guys rank in the bottom half of the league in third down, stopping the third down and stopping the third and long, and now you're facing the offense that's been the best at third down and third and long. What do you guys have to do to be better? What are the things you notice that you guys can be sharper in those moments?
We got to put together a good plan. We got to have a good week. We have detailed execution as a collective. That's the ingredients.
So Mike's going to be very bland with that answer because he's not going to give away the secret sauces of what they're trying to do. And as players and coaches often should and do, they're not going to give you the exact details because they don't want everyone to know what they're trying to do. But like, for example, to your point, getting the right leverage in certain situations, I think that's a big key to what they have to do if they're going to play well moving forward. I think that's something they did better against the Vikings. When you look at what they were able to do to limit their opportunities on third downs, I thought they did better against the Browns. And granted, Browns, a low bar as far as the talent that you're stopping when you're trying to convert third and longs with Dylan Gabriel. But that's where it's important to do it in those games so that when you play the bigger offenses, you can do it in those games. And I think that's the disappointment, is that the progress that they had shown from, the Patriots win to the Vikings win to the Browns win, it kind of just eroded all in front of you with it. And like, even on some of the earlier drives against the Bengals where they were able to get stops, there were some third and long conversions where it was just like, hey man, if you could just limit that here and there, you'll be in a good spot. But I mean, they give up 50% of third downs to the Bengals, and now they're playing a team in the Packers that, has been very good at that. And in fact, they're just shy of 50% on the year. And so that's going to be a big challenge for them. And to me, it's going to require details. It's going to require putting yourself in better third down situations. But even when you get there, you have to be ready because they're good at the explosive plays. You brought up the explosive play rates. They're good at the explosive plays, and they're going to look for those ways to exploit those mismatches that you've now shown on tape.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about the Steelers and their struggles against explosive plays. Using that same criteria, the Packers have produced the second most explosive plays, or the second highest explosive play rate. 13.2% of their plays fit into that category, second best in the league. And it's especially true through the air. 19.4% of their passes are going for 16 plus yards, which is the second highest rate, second most given that criteria. So, one thing that I think about when you just kind of zoom out and look at this defense as a whole, their best performances have come when they've slowed or completely stopped the run, because that's put the opponent in third and long situations when those edge rushers can feast, when they know that they're going to be passing the ball. You can have Highsmith and Herbig on the field at the same time, something the Steelers have done recently more and more, and really get after the quarterback that way. So, I think when we're talking about how do you slow down the Packers on third down in this game, it really starts with success on first and second, and success against the run if you're going to limit those explosive plays.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, is you got to be able to put yourself in a position to stop those better. And again, like to Tomlin's point about stopping the run, you limit the explosive runs. I still think that part of it is how the game plan impacts everything, right? Like I fully believe, and I brought this up on shows before, but I think the Steelers, part of what they do when they face a superstar wide receiver is they don't try to put everything into just stopping that one player. They try to say, hey, we're going to keep that guy from breaking open like the 50-yard touchdown or anything like that. But our main focus is going to be to keep him contained while taking away the other things like the T. Higginses, like the run game. And the thing is, they didn't take away either. And then therefore everything kind of compounded on itself. Then you have a mess where you give up 33 points against the Bengals. And again, the Bengals deserve credit for what they did. They played a really good game. Flacco was on point. It wasn't like Flacco didn't have a really good game. Like, it wasn't like they just, this wasn't like when the Broncos put up 33 points in a quarter against the Giants. Like that's bad. But like, this is where I think that it can't, like, there are signs that things can be fixable. And I think also that with the guys that they have, and this goes back to the personnel package questions, I think that it's up to the Steelers to find the guys that are going to win those situations more consistently. And I brought up on yesterday's show, Mike, and really I brought it up since Thursday night. I think they could use Brendan Eccles maybe a little bit more at the outside cornerback position. And also Mike Tomlin said that Corey Trice could be back, could be returning soon. And granted, we haven't seen much of Corey Trice, but if there's anybody who can bump and run and cover and just be tough on the outside at cornerback, so that you can take Slay out of those duties, maybe put him in a spot where his zone coverage skills and instincts can come more into play. I think that could go a long way into playing the way the Steelers want to end up playing.
Yeah, I'm curious to see Slay is a good question mark going forward in terms of how do you deploy him, because really the question comes up when you're in your base defense. Mm-hmm. And obviously I think people know right now what the rotation is, where Slay's now an outside corner and Ramsey goes back to free safety. But, I'm thinking back to the most recent game against the Bengals, and I know you've got to match personnel, and I know you probably have to play nickel in most situations against those wide receivers. But if you aren't stopping the run, do you start to say, okay, look, let's just put our attention into stopping the run. Let's play our base defense, and let's put Ramsey at outside corner and, and somebody else at safety. I think, and basically what I'm saying is limit the exposure of a 34-year-old Slay. Slay is a Pro Bowl caliber guy, fringe Hall of Fame kind of guy, but he's also 34 years old. I don't think that, limiting his exposure to some degree would be the worst idea in the world.
I agree with you there. I want to talk about some personnel usage on the offensive side, but less more about a complaint, more about what they might be up to, because Calvin Austin is set to return this week, and how could that impact the offensive game plan? We'll talk about that next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, here with Mike DeFabo of The Athletic. Stick with us. We'll be right back.
I'm Cody Rourke from Locked On Broncos, and this episode is brought to you by Peloton. Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. This is Peloton's most advanced equipment yet, giving you real-time guidance and endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or you're cross-training with your favorite instructors like Alex Toussaint. It's training reimagined to make your workout more personal. Peloton is built for breakthroughs with features that help you plan, stay motivated, and hit peak performance. You can let yourself run, lift, flex, and go, while Peloton handles all the rest. Plus, Peloton IQ provides real-time strength coaching, tracking your progress and suggesting weights that challenge you so you can get stronger. Plus, the new movement tracking camera, it counts your reps and corrects your form in real time, making sure every rep is safer and smarter. So let yourself run, lift, flex, push, and go. Explore the new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus at onepeloton.com.
Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure that you're ready for kickoff with this can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use all across the FanDuel app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. If you like player props, they've got that. Building same game parlays, they got that too. Even jumping in live as the action unfolds if you missed your chance to get before all the games get started. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to Sundays. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app today by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet and get your chance at $300 in bonus bets only on FanDuel. Steelers podcast, Chris Carter, Mike DeFabo. Mike, Calvin Austin is set to return this week per Mike Tomlin. Calvin Austin has been feeling really confident. He's been excited to get back out there. This is going to be interesting to me because there's still a lot of talk about who the Steelers can trade for at wide receiver and add there. But Calvin Austin is a dangerous playmaker when the ball's in his hands. And I will say Roman Wilson, I think, made a couple plays when given the chance to this past week. And you saw how much the tight ends stepped up in this game. Where do you see the Steelers, or how do you see the Steelers going about their offense as far as who gets the bulk of the who's getting targets and who might get usage in this offense with Calvin Austin back in the fold?
Well, before Calvin Austin got injured, he was clearly wide receiver 2. Going into the season, there was so much question and talk about that. In an OTA, Zach Kazani just came right out and said, look, we've got a wide receiver 2. His name is Calvin Austin. And that was truly the case. If you looked at their snaps before Calvin got hurt, he had very close to the same number of snaps as DK Metcalf. And so they had it set. And I think that he is that guy right now. He's clearly, I think, your second best option on the team. Roman, I think people still want to be optimistic about him, but I think he's showing it's still going to take a little bit more time for the coaching staff to fully trust him. And so I would think he slides right back in and gets the second to third most targets. And in terms of wide receiver, clearly the second most snaps. What does that mean for the other guys? Keyshawn Williams was a guy that they brought up, signed him off the practice squad to the active roster. I think he showed a lot of flash as a punt returner and has some upside, but I think that he's probably going to be inactive now going forward. And I expect a little bit less from Scotty Miller and Ben Skoranek.
I think that there's certainly going to be a diminishing of those two guys, Skoranek and Miller. I just wonder if with what the Steelers have on offense, if you'll start to see some more packages that switch Austin and Wilson a bit more, because early on in the season, when Austin wasn't out there, or when he was, the other receiver that would get out there would be Ben Skoranek. Like, you think back to that touchdown that Aaron Rodgers threw against the Jets in the deep crossing pattern there. You think like some of the plays Scotty Miller gets. And I do wonder what happens to Roman Wilson in this rotation. I also wonder what do they do with the tight end packages? Does that change at all? Does it change how frequently you want to use them? But this team, and again, it was interesting that Adam Schefter reported the other day that the Steelers are looking for a speed wide receiver. This team has speed at wide receiver. DK Metcalf, Roman Wilson, Calvin Austin, Scotty Miller all ran sub 4.4 40-yard dashes when they came into the NFL. They have plenty of speed. And I think Calvin Austin might have the best burners out of all of them, which is why I think that he'll get used. But I do think that that's part of what's going to happen here, is that you're going to see Calvin Austin thrust a bit forward, maybe Roman Wilson a little bit. And then maybe they find certain matchups where, like, hey, you know what? We think Ben Skoranek can bully this guy in this certain situation here because he's just so much bigger and stronger. Or, you know what? We think Scotty Miller can route this guy up because he's a more detailed veteran in his work than maybe this young nickel cornerback that they go up against in a certain formation. So I think this is going to be more matchup based when you see moving forward. But either way, I think Calvin Austin coming back is a really good thing. And I think he's going to get used right away by Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, I mean, it was not 1-for-1. I think a lot of people wanted it to be Calvin Austin is injured. That means Roman Wilson is up. Right. And as we saw, that was not the case. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Ben Skoranek and Scotty Miller outsnapped him in one or both of the games. So, I think that now it's just going to continue to be an even tougher uphill climb for Roman Wilson. He's going to just have to continue to work and practice and try to prove himself, try to build that connection with Aaron Rodgers, try to earn the coaching staff's trust. Because I think stylistically, he does make sense with this team. He's a good route runner. He's fast. He has really good hands. He's reliable. He doesn't drop the ball. But for whatever reason, he just hasn't earned the staff's trust enough that to make him a bigger piece of this offense.
I think it's certainly part of what needs to happen. Calvin Austin is a heck of a playmaker. He gets open. When he gets the ball and you get the ball in his hands, he goes for big yards. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how Aaron Rodgers works him in. The Steelers, it's tough to complain about what the Steelers are doing on offense, Mike. They're the 11th best scoring offense in the NFL right now. They're moving the ball. They're the best offense at third and short. in the NFL. They're still I think they're top 5 in red zone offense right now. So it's tough to find much to complain about this offense. But while this defense is figuring things out, that could be the thing that buys this team time to win and can win some games while they're still trying to fix whatever's going on in the defense.
Yeah, but they do face a really big test against the Green Bay Packers. The Green Bay Packers have a very good defense all around, and especially with Micah Parsons in that defensive front, I think this is going to be a great test for that young offensive line.
It certainly will be, and we'll be keeping tabs on that all week long at the Steelers facility here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, just like Mike DeFabo will be. Mike, thanks so much for joining us here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let people know they can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
Yeah, you can find me on social media at Mike DeFabo and read all my stuff in The Athletic, of course.
Absolutely. Mike, thanks for joining us here in the Locked On Steelers podcast. Thank you all for joining us here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, wherever you get social media. You can find me at Carter Critiques. You can read my work in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette by going to post-gazette.com. And you can find me here every day, Monday through Friday, on the Locked On Steelers podcast, on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this channel to get all of those daily Monday through Friday episodes as well as opponents content. Back here tomorrow for Crossover Thursday here on the Locked On Podcast Network.